Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received, and the message reads like this. Hello, my brother. How are you? Can you please post my story as anonymous? I have my own confession that I want to share with you, and my confession reads like this. My story, my brother, is started when I was still working for this other company, working as a driver. I was just driving this other small truck. It is a Hyundai H100. Whilst I was driving that truck, a lot of people that I was working with at that company, they didn't like me at all. And then our boss, he started firing a lot of guys that were from Zim. And I was the only one that was left because of my experience. In fact, when my boss had started his company, this was way back, because when I came to South Africa, I only worked for my boss and no one else. And after he had fired me, I then decided to return back home to Zim. But I had taken a lot of things that are troubling me, as well as troubling my family, because of the pressure that I was getting at work. So, my brother, when I started working for my boss, he only had one small van that we used to carry some groceries, taking them to different small shops. So from there on, because of my hard work, he was able to purchase more vehicles, and he started hiring a lot of drivers until I then started driving that small Hyundai H100 small truck. Whilst I was driving that truck, then there came a group of new drivers that didn't know how this company had started, and it seemed as if they didn't even care, and they didn't understand the reason as to why I kept on working very hard and why I was so close to my boss, because there were a lot of things that my boss was promising me. My boss, him being an Indian man, he had said that he wanted to set up another shop here in Zim. So what we'll be doing is that we will be transporting the groceries from South Africa, taking them to the other shop that he wanted to start in Zim. So my boss was the reason as to why I kept on working very hard, because he had promised me a lot. So other drivers, they didn't understand. They thought that maybe I was just stupid. That is the reason why I was working for a salary that was not even enough, because we were all earning the same. It was not a big paycheck. It was just so that you can have money to buy food and to pay rent. So when my boss started firing guys that were from Zim, that was when one day he said that the pressure that he was getting, it was just too much. He had to hire a lot of local drivers instead of foreign drivers. And he said that he felt so sad because we were going to part ways before we had achieved that dream that he wanted to achieve of setting up another shop there in Zim. Unfortunately, he then gave me my money. He also said, I do not want you to go to the CCMA, so we have to do these things on our own. He ended up giving me some money so that I won't go to the CCMA, because of the many years that I had worked for him. When he gave me the money, it was quite a lot. I was even able to build a small 2-roomed house here in our village where I am currently staying. When I had used up all of that money, that was when I went back to him and I told him that I wanted to speak with him, and he said it is fine. I then went into his office and I explained my situation to him. After that, he then said it is fine. You can work until you have found money for bus and transport so that you can go back to Zim. I was so dry at that time. You know, when you are building, it requires a lot of money. So all that money that he had given me, I had used it, all of it, and I was now regretting, like, agreeing that I should not have approached the CCMA. Maybe if I had done so, I could have gotten a little bit of money for all of the years that I worked for this Indian man. He then said that I was going to drive that same Hyundai H100 that I used to drive. This was going to be for a very short period of time so that I can raise up the money to take some of my properties that I had bought here in South Africa. So when the other drivers saw me one morning coming into the workshop, they were all shocked and they thought that maybe the boss had hired me back. Then they started to insult me each and every day. When I would come to work, they would always insult me. But what they didn't know is that I was there for only a short period of time and I was supposed to return back to my country, but I kept on working. But the pressure that I was getting, it was quite a lot. One day, that was when I just thought that these guys, I have had enough of these guys. Because what was now happening was that when I would go to work with my food in my small lunchbox, sometimes I would find it that someone would have opened it up. So it was very difficult not knowing if someone was trying to poison me or what. I then approached, there are those white garment prophets. That is the type of people that I approached. When I approached them, then the man who was assisting me, he said that he is not allowed by God to do the things that I wanted him to do because I had brought along some pictures of the guys that I was working with. Those pictures, they were in my phone. So during lunchtime, I'll just pretend as if I was using my phone. Then I will capture the images of those guys one by one and save it in a hidden folder in my phone. So when I showed him all the pictures of my workmates and what I wanted to happen to them, he said that the Bible does not allow him to do such a thing. He only suggested that it will be very easy if I was going to approach some red garment prophets. So I started going around Pretoria looking for those red garment prophets that come from Zim. But it was quite a difficult thing because some of them, the amount of money that they were saying that I should give them, it was just too much. I could not even afford it. I was seeing that if I wanted to do this with the amount that they were charging me, it was far much better that I just use that money as a bus ticket and I return back home. Then I met this other prophet. He was staying in Soshanguve. When I met this man, he then told me that as for him, he was dealing with a lot of criminals that are stealing people's stuff. So they come to him. He doesn't even select if the person who would have come to him is a South African, a Mozambican, Lesotho, or whatever. He only helps them. And the way that he helps them is to make sure that when they have committed a crime, those policemen that will be going after the case, they will just feel so lazy to follow up on the case until the case will just disappear. That was the type of charms he said that he could do. But when I went to him, I said that I didn't want to be a criminal. All that I wanted was to make those guys that were insulting me each and every day to pay. He said, how do you want them to pay? I said, if death is possible, I'll be so happy. In that moment, my brother, it was like I was possessed by an evil demon that was making me to think of all the things that I was thinking. Whenever I would be at work, when I would look at any of my colleagues, I would feel this deep hatred, not like a physical hatred whereby I hate someone because they are from a certain tribe. No, that hatred, to hate the spirit that is inside them. I do not know how that hatred entered into my heart, but I am still suffering from that thing. So that prophet then laughed and he said that it was an easy thing. All that he wanted was 100 rands per person. So those guys that I was working with, we were 5 drivers, including me. So I then gave him 400 rands. It was enough. He then said that all that we had to do was that we had to buy some big needles, and after we had bought those needles, he then took out this other black doll. But this black doll that he took, it was that representing the figure of a man, and he said that I had to insert all of those needles into the legs of that black doll. When I was doing that, my brother, I swear to God that I saw blood coming out of that black doll. When the blood had dried up, that was when that red garment prophet said that it is done. You can return back to your place. But he gave me some stones. These were river stones that he gave to me, and some river sand and some holy water. He said, when you go back to your place, the first thing that I want you to do is that you see these 3 river stones that I have given you. You are going to place it in a bucket of water. You should not bath with soap or any chemical. You should just use water only. He then said that these are the 4 stones that I have given you. They are representing your workmates, those drivers that were giving me a lot of trouble. He said that before you have bathed, what you are supposed to do is that you are supposed to stand whilst your back is facing the sun, and you are supposed to throw all of those stones in the direction where the sun sets, so that the angels can assist you. This is what I did, my brother. When I had arrived back home, I waited just before the sun had gone down. I then stood with my back against the sun. Then I started throwing those stones one by one, and I was telling the angels all that I wanted them to do or to fight against those men that were insulting me each and every day. After that, he had said that I was supposed to take the river sand, mix it with that water, that I would have placed those 3 river stones, and after that I had to start washing myself. So whilst I will be washing myself, he said, just like the way a river flows, and whilst it will be flowing, it carries away all of the dirt and the bad things. So even if these men were going to die, the water that I would have bathed with, it was going to wash my body, and their spirits, they will never fight against me, because before God I was like a holy and a clean man. After I was done bathing, my brother, I then went inside. All of these things that I did not even tell my wife at all. Then, my brother, when I was fast asleep, then I started to have some strange dreams. And whenever I'll be having those strange dreams, it will be me with those 4 South African men that I used to work with. But all of those men, it was like they were more like my slaves, because they were chained together. And I was the one who was walking in front of them, but they were really afraid, but they could not even tell me that they were afraid. It seemed as if the place where I was taking them to, it was not a nice place. I didn't even know why they were so scared of that place, but we kept on walking and walking. After all of those men had passed away, my brother, that was when I noticed that these men, they were on the other side of the river, and on that side of the river that they were standing, I saw that their spirits were now being used by some men, those men that are doing these things of making other people to do money-making rituals. I saw 2 men. These men, they are old men that seem to be herbalists, and they were holding 4 large bottles, and inside those glass bottles there were the spirit of those 4 men. However, these men, they did not die whilst I was in South Africa. They died one by one when I had returned back home in Zim, and each and every time before any of these men would have passed away, I would have a weird dream. I'll be standing in the graveyard. Whilst I'll be standing in that graveyard, then I'll see one of my former colleagues walking slowly towards me with the chain that will be wrapped around the man's arms. And when he would have arrived at where I would be standing, I did not even know how I managed to point to their graves. I'll just point to an empty grave. Then that man will just walk until he would have fallen over into that grave. Then I would see that on top of that grave there is a tombstone. So when I had all of these strange dreams, some of the people that I was staying with back in South Africa, I used to be in communication with them. That was when they will say, I forgot to tell you that these are the men that you used to work with at that other company that you were working at when you were in South Africa. That man, he passed away. All of these men, my brother, the way that they passed away, they will be just resting on the steering wheel. Then they will just have something like a heart attack, or they will be found dead whilst they will be resting, just sitting on the driver's seat. This thing, my brother, it saddens me a lot because I know what I did, even though I have managed to keep it as a secret from my wife.